welcome to Veloce Driving. So our podcast today, we're here with Graeme Glew, who is the owner of Formula Woman. So we thought we'd bring him on the show today and find out a bit more about Formula One, from its history to where it is now. So thank you, Graeme, for joining us on the show. How are you today?
Welcome. I'm good, thanks. Yeah.
Ready? Good. So first of all, I just want to get a bit of background on you, really. So you've been in the industry for over 30 years in the industry. So with motorsport in general, did you start on the commercial side or the racing side?
No, I pretended to be a racing driver to start with.
For how long?
Well, it's an interesting story, and people keep saying I should write a book, and maybe one day I will. But I actually designed and built my own Formula Ford car when I was at school, and I did it for an engineering A-level project. And then I went to Loughborough College and I completed the car there, and then I raced it. Well, I drove it. It wasn't very successful. It wasn't very competitive. The chassis decided to break it by itself along the straight at Croft. Right. So my father then said, enough's enough, and he bought me a real racing car.
So what was the real racing car then?
The real racing car was a Hawk DL19, which I managed to damage at Croft again, except this time at Tower Bend, and ended up doing a corkscrew roll there. And I still to this day don't know what happened, but there you go.
So do you not go to Croft now then?
Yeah, I do actually. And every time I go around Tower Bend, I think I kind of get tensed up as I go through the corner. And
yeah, I bet.
I'm not surprised.
It's funny how it's probably one of the few corners on the circuits in the UK that is still the same, except there was a big bank on the left, and that's no longer there anymore. So
because you can go straight onto the field, can't you, at Tower, if you really want to?
Well, as I say, I should have done. I just did not.
And you tried to commit and carry on.
There's a little bit more to this story. The fact that my parents were stood on the inside watching at that bend, and as I was trying to get myself out the car, my father was helping me. And the first thing I said to him, "How did you get over here?" Yeah. He'd run across the track to help me out, checked I was all right, and then off we went and repaired the car, and off we went racing again.
Very good.
So what happened to the marshals then? Were there no marshals back then?
No, it wasn't that long ago. The marshals, and the marshals were helping me out along with my dad, and you know, that's another chapter in the book.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So was it more of an engineering thing then, or were you a motor racing person wanting to drive?
Well, I was brought up in the motor trade. My father had a garage, and we were the Hillman dealers, and was it Hillman, Humber, Sunbeam, and Singer? And basically, I just built the car at the garage. And I started driving when I was 12. We had a track round the back of the garage, and I used to go hurtling around the track in whatever I could get my hands on. And then my dad took me to Silverstone to the racing school when I was 14, and that's it. After that, I was hooked.
Yeah.
Okay.
And how did it shift then from being a driver to then moving on to the commercial side?
Well, you should be able to guess this one, because what happened was I ran out of money.
Yeah, I know that feeling too well.
Well, my dad said, I've sponsored you as much as I can. He said, it's up to you now. So what I did is I went off to Cadwell Park, and I met with a guy called Charlie Wilkinson, who owned the circuit before Brands Hatch took it over. And I said, can I run a racing school here? And he said, you can try. He says, it's been tried before. It's never worked. He says, but you can try. And I remember it cost me, for the day, I had the whole circuit for 70 quid.
Wow.
And then,
that doesn't seem so bad now.
And then I put an advert in the Yorkshire Post, and we had 4 clients that turned up on the day, and we ran the school, and then 10 years later, we were still running the school. So it turned into a proper business. It was good times. We had people, we used to say to people, we don't teach you how to drive a racing car, we teach you how to race a racing car. Yeah. And that little caption brought people from all over the world to come to our racing school. Our only competition at the time was Jim Russell.
Yeah.
And
wow. Because you don't seem to see that anymore, do you? Those kind of traditional racing schools like you had, and like you say, the Jim Russell. No. Why do you think that is?
Track days, because people introduced track days. Every single circuit has a track day now, and the track days you can get a driver coach and you can practice without or learn without having to go to a traditional racing school. It's interesting that you say that, because in the United States there are still a lot of racing schools about.
Okay. And you think that's because they don't have the same kind of the culture, like you say, with instructors on track days, like, because here it's so accessible, isn't it? We've got tracks so close everywhere in the country. It's quite easy to do, isn't it, in comparison?
Yeah.
And I think it was Callum Lockie who introduced track days through Gold Track, and then everybody started to get involved. Javelin and what's the other one called? RMI.
That's it.
RMA.
That's it.
Yeah, there's lots of track days, and they're all different. They're all some are expensive, some are reasonably priced. But you see the amount of cars that go on these track days now. It's quite interesting. I had this conversation the other day. On a track day, it helps you get used to traffic as well.
Absolutely.
Which with the you never had that problem, because nobody was allowed to overtake because you were learning. So I've found with the Formula Woman track days that we've done, that is get the women to actually concentrate on looking in the mirrors before and after every corner, and it just gets them used to a racing environment.
Absolutely, it does. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Sorry, you can say.
Yeah, no. So I was going to say, so with sponsorship, then obviously, arguably that's harder. That's a harder nut to crack than driving, isn't it? So did you fall to that naturally? Is it something you had to work at to get successful at that?
Yeah, I mean, I when I was racing myself, I found my own sponsors after my father had drawn the line, and then the racing school. The idea of setting a racing school up was for me to go racing again.
Sure.
But I didn't go racing until 10 years after we set the school up. But this is a very interesting point. When I went back to racing after teaching other people, I suddenly found I was competitive, because I was learning, I was teaching other people and learning myself.
Yeah.
Got back into a Lola Thunder sports car. It was a works drive with Andrew Broadley, who was the son of he was the son of Eric Broadley, the founder of Lola. And Andrew and we raced this Lola in Thunder Sports, and then I did some multi-sports driving, because when John Webb took over the racing schools from Brands Hatch, he said you can drive these new multi-sports cars, and that's when Formula First was introduced. That's actually when I started. We were running our own team, and we ran, who did we had? We had Rafael Del Sar, Kelvin Burt was one of the competition winners. So we had a team, and we were James Rhodes, Oliver Gavin. And that's when I started to manage drivers. So I was drivers, and in particular Oliver Gavin, who I knew straight away was going to be a superstar, because he was just so fast and had the right attitude, and he had the right backing, because I hate to say this, but he came from a reasonably well-heeled family. So they were able to afford to take him to a certain level. And they employed me to find sponsorship for Oliver to go into Formula 3. And we did. And at the time, we had a deal with GQ magazine, and GQ magazine would supply us with pages, and we would sell pages to a sponsor. And we did that for 2 years, and Oliver won the British Formula 3 Championship.
Yeah, fantastic.
So is that side of it still a big part of your business then, sponsorship and management and things?
Yeah, it is, because people, agencies and management teams don't really like to go and find sponsorship, because it's so hard.
Yes,
absolutely.
And it's changed a lot, especially in the last 2 years with COVID. You know, people have just used COVID as an excuse. Oh, we haven't got any marketing budget, we're still trying to survive. So I think you know, it is hard, and we're quite, even with the Formula Woman project, we're actually attracting some interesting sponsors, because they see Formula Woman as something completely different to motorsport. Well, as part of motorsport, they see that women in sport generally is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I think what we did because we did Formula Woman in 2004, as you probably remember, Kat. And 2005, 2006, and then we didn't have social media.
No,
social media, very different.
It's driven Formula Woman across the globe, and the finals in next week, week after next, we have 17 different countries involved in the Formula Woman finals. Chile, Mexico, Brazil, USA, Canada, Kuwait, India. It's amazing. It's unbelievable.
Were you surprised by that? Obviously, running it back in 2004 and how different it was then to now with social media. Were you surprised that it had that kind of reach so quickly?
Yeah, because we set up an expression of interest website, and that was very popular, and that was back in November 2001. No, 2000. No, 2000. So what am I talking about? 2021 was the expression of interest website. And then because of the interest and because of the McLaren desire to get involved, we said, right, let's just do it. So, and people would say, are you sure this is right, setting it up in the middle of COVID? And it's the best thing we ever did, because so many women were sat at home, bored, couldn't go out, couldn't do anything. So the social media channels just exploded. And we have a young lady who looks after our social media, and she's very good because she understands all the platforms, not just one. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing you have to consider now, isn't it? Is there are so many now that you have to have that presence on all the time.
Yeah, we found that Twitter didn't do much for us. Facebook did, Instagram really did, and then the big one was TikTok.
Oh, was it?
Oh, really?
That's interesting. You wouldn't think necessarily from a business perspective that TikTok would be that useful.
Yeah. Oh, and LinkedIn was very useful.
Yeah, yeah. So
and LinkedIn is also very useful for kind of trying to track down sponsors.
Yeah. I have to say, well, you can get to people, can't you, a little bit more easily directly to them. I wouldn't say it's easy, but at least you are trying to speak to the exact person you need to. That's the difference, isn't it, with LinkedIn? Yeah.
And at the end of the day, a lot of it is it's not what you know, it's who you know, and meeting the right people in the right place and getting them to, as I say, Formula Woman's a different it's a different proposition to most motorsport sponsorship pitches or presentations, and most people get it.
Yeah. So how does it, because obviously you had the W series, so you originally did Formula Woman back in 2004, then of course more recently had the W series. So to people that perhaps don't know, what's the difference with Formula Woman to the W series?
The W series was set up for women who are already in racing, and I think the majority of the women in the W series probably started racing in karts, or certainly when they were a lot younger. And of course you can race Ginettas now at 14 years old. So I think and it's single seaters, so those are the three main differences. Our Formula Woman is about women who have little or no experience whatsoever. It's about GT racing, and it's probably giving people a chance that didn't really understand motorsport, so we're educating them as we go along.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So the original one in 2004, then, did you see that as successful?
Yeah, I did. I mean, we had nearly 10,000 applications, and that was driven by Mazda. It was driven by national media, national television. We got it on ITV, so that was a huge success. The only disappointment was that the 16 winners that drove the Mazda RX-8s, I think there's only one of them there's only two of the finalists still racing.
Is that right?
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah.
So do you keep in touch with them?
From time to time, yeah. Natasha Furman was the champion. She's been an ambassador for Formula Woman. She's still very keen to go racing again. I keep telling her that she should. And the good thing about GT Cup on GT racing is that some of our instructors can easily pair up with some of the new girls, as I call them, to be able to perhaps race together. And this is maybe something that you should consider, Kat.
Yeah, no, it sounds good to me. You just tell me when and I'll show up. Unfortunately, it's probably not that easy, but yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing with GT racing, it's really taken a new turn, hasn't it? Especially with kind of Formula One with the budget caps, there's even more emphasis on GT racing. So it's quite nice to show girls that it doesn't have to be single seaters, and you don't have to start necessarily from 4 years old in karts and work your way up. So I think it's a great incentive. But why do you think it's the best time now for women? Because there is definitely more focus on girls now, isn't there, in the sport?
Yeah, women in sport is huge, and everybody's looking at women in sport, and everybody's getting more and more involved, even in football and rugby and cricket and everything to do with sport. It's all about women. And it's media driven, of course. The media are driving this heavily. But I'll tell you a little secret, which is just about to come out. The GT Cup, we are actually inviting women to come along who want to get involved in the technical side and shadow the team that are running our GT Cup team.
Okay.
So in other words, we're looking for an apprentice team manager, an apprentice data engineer, an apprentice mechanic, an apprentice tire person. And the only criteria is they've got to be women.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
so how will you market that? How will these women know then that they could perhaps get involved?
Because it's all going out in our newsletter.
So
what goes out in the newsletter, bear in mind we've got just under 1,000 women. A lot of them, I would say a good probably 10-15% are already mechanics. They're already involved in the motorsport. Well, not necessarily motorsport, but in the automotive industry.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So finals is next then. So what's your ultimate goal with this then? Do you want to find more drivers? Is it going to be a continuing program?
Yes. Well, when the finalists arrive on the day, which is March the 2nd, at PFI, because that's where everybody starts racing in the go-kart. So that's what we decided to do. I will say at the briefing, right, you are all here for one reason, and that is you are good. You have natural ability. You've got to this level because you impressed the instructors and you did everything right on your assessment. And what's going to happen is that there are only 6 women that are going to go through to the finals, 4 for the team and 2 reserves. Unfortunately, we can't put you all through. It's going to be down to you on the day as to how you perform. If you mess up, then it's your own fault. It's a fair and square competition. However, all of those of you that don't get through, we want you to stay in the Formula Woman community because we want to help and guide you and coach you and help you find sponsors and give you opportunities that you'd never ever dreamed of in the past.
Brilliant.
Yeah, so that's a really nice thing for them to know, that even if they don't perhaps quite make it, there's still opportunities. It's not that's not the end. Over. Yeah. Exactly, that they can continue in the sport, and I'm sure they'll learn so much. So are you able to give us an insight to what they have to do in the final?
I can give you a little bit of an insight because they already know anyway that they're going to be doing a race. They know that they're going to be tested in different areas such as the technical aspects of the sport, the media side of the sport, data acquisition, simulators. We don't need to do any more fitness tests because we know that the 50, 60 that we've got that have gone through to the final. I say 50, 60 because we couldn't get it down to 50. There was too much competition there. So that we already know that they're all fit and healthy and capable of racing a car and being fit to do it. So we're not doing any fitness tests. Well, we might be doing one actually, but that's a secret.
Okay.
And then,
okay. So is it as simple as then with the race? Is that kind of the big pinnacle bit where they get the most points on that?
Yes, it's a good proportion, but the other tests are important too. And then on the second day there is a team test, and then because we're going to try and put them together in teams because let's face it, GT racing is about teamwork.
Absolutely.
And then on the second day we have to get them down from the total amount down to 15.
Yeah. So that's going to be quite tricky.
That's quite a call.
Yeah, I wanted to do 20, but because on the third day, we're taking them to another circuit and they're going to be driving cars and the 15 will then be taken down to 10.
Right.
Okay.
A few days later, the 10 go to Europe where they against the clock and they compete to get it down to 6.
Okay, and that is against the clock then. So the top 6 are going to be literally the fastest of that 10.
Yeah, it's down to them.
Yeah.
It gets me off the hook, Kat.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
What makes it black and white? People can't argue with that.
The clock doesn't lie. No.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And then presumably there's a program to get them ready for the first race then, because that's
that's
in
where
the
I'm
beginning,
gonna
isn't
be,
it? Really.
That's where I'm going to be calling Kat to come and help me.
That's okay. I'll be available, I'm sure. It'll be fine.
That's the tough bit, and we've only got a month to do it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So on the 11th of March, the ones that are through will know, and the ones that are not through will also know. But I'm trying to encourage everybody that's been in the competition to come and support the winners at each event, and we'll get some tickets organised so that they can come and be part of it. And this Formula Woman community, it's not just growing in the UK; it's growing globally.
Absolutely.
By the way, there's going to be something quite interesting at the end of the year in December in another country, which is going to allow the international applicants, and maybe one from England, Scotland, Wales, and Ireland, to actually compete against each other. I don't know if you remember, back in 2005 or 6, was it? We did a Nations Cup at Rockingham.
Yeah.
And Anna Waleska was who's one of our instructors now, was one of the competitors in that race. She's only 17 at the time.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's going to be something you're going to potentially do then at the end of this.
Oh yeah, we're working on it right now.
Excellent.
All I can say is a country that's got government support.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, that helps. That definitely helps. For sure. So there's so much on the cards then. So with McLaren, how did McLaren come into this? Obviously such a big name. How did you get them on board?
Well, I was introduced to Mia Fluid, and Mia was racing a McLaren with Sky sponsorship, and basically Mia introduced me to. I already knew 1 or 2 people at McLaren, and we did a pitch to them, and they came back and said, we love this idea, we really want to do it. And that was shortly after the Expression of Interest website had gone out, and that's probably what made me think, we've got to do this. We don't get chances like this very often.
Yeah, no. Absolutely. And are they going to be ongoing with you, an ongoing partnership, or is that not known yet?
No, I don't know, and I don't mind which way it goes, because since then other manufacturers have come on board and said, how can we get involved with Formula Woman? Vauxhall being.
Yeah, absolutely.
And of course we found a route in for Vauxhall, and they've benefited hugely with the Vauxhall Corsa E.
Yeah.
And you've driven the Corsa E, it's not a bad car.
No, not at all. To be honest, I think people, especially a lot of people, haven't driven electric cars yet, and they're really surprised how fun it can actually be. Because, of course, if you're sort of a bit more of a petrol head or a mechanic, and perhaps electric cars aren't as exciting, or you perceive them not to be. And I think that was definitely the shock to most of the girls, is actually it was really nimble, and it as you know, with electric, so instant with the power. So, and of course, on the road, you're not going to use top end speed. So absolutely. I think everybody was really quite surprised by it, honestly.
Yeah. No, I was, when I drove it first time at Carfest, and I thought, this is good fun.
Yeah, absolutely. So have you got any other projects going on then, away from Formula Woman?
Sleeping. When I can. I mean, restoring this house it's probably, as I said earlier on, it's the wrong time to do it, but we're in here now. We just make most of it. I mean, the other project that's on the go is the one in India, because India did an assessment, and there are 4 Indian ladies competing in the final.
Okay.
And again, there is some government support over there to do something with Formula Woman in India.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Got a very good guy who's been working with us in that country. And of course, there's going to be other countries coming on board.
Oh, absolutely.
So this could get bigger and bigger, as it gets more and more traction.
The biggest problem I've got is just holding it back, because it's going too fast too soon, and we just got to get this bit right in the UK. Make sure it works well. Make sure that we get. I'm confident that out of those drivers, the last 6, there are going to be some very fast ladies. They're going to raise a few eyebrows with the men.
Yeah,
sure.
absolutely, and that will be so good for women in the sport.
Yeah, we're all for that.
You know, we'll really highlight that as well, because that again is the difference, I suppose, with the W Series. It's girls competing against girls. There's always that question, well, what would they be like against the guys? And I guess as much as you can argue it, you can't beat putting them against the guys and actually seeing it. So I think it could really help a lot for women in the sport from that angle.
Yeah, and I've got a question for you, Kat.
Yeah.
When you've been racing as a woman, how often have you been intimidated by the men?
I have had times. I mean, to be honest, I found actually on track it wasn't so bad. Honestly, it was probably more in the paddock and certain individuals not liking that a female is faster. On track, I didn't have too many issues, but definitely in the paddock, you would know who just decided they didn't like you just because you were faster, that kind of thing. And it took, especially when I was younger, a while to understand what was going on, because I was thinking, well, why am I different to that guy over there? Why do you chat to him but you won't talk to me? So culturally, it took a while, and I think it certainly toughens you up. And I do think you have to go into that environment to learn how to deal with it. And develop those skills to be thick-skinned, and I think just prove it on the track, honestly, what you can do.
Yeah, I always remember a story from my son Philip. He was on the grid with Susie Stoddart, now Susie Wolf, and the mechanics were ribbing him and saying, because Susie was on the row in front of Philip, they were ribbing him, saying, you can't get beaten by a woman, you just can't.
Yeah.
And of course, he put additional pressure on Philip, and I think I don't know whether he stalled on the line, but he didn't get a good start. And Susie, I don't know whether he got past Susie or not. I wasn't there. This was at Thruxton.
Yeah.
But it just shows the mentality of the team can easily wind up a driver.
Yeah.
And there's so much psychology in this sport without all this nonsense.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's why Sabine, who's working on the project, she's been dealing with a lot of the competitors who have actually subscribed to her mind coaching program, and to me the mind coaching side is so important.
Absolutely. Well, they say it's about 85% of performance is in the mind, isn't it? Once you've got the technical element behind you, you see it, don't you, in Formula One or any of the pinnacle of sports, really, that you can crack under pressure, and that's where you need that grounding with a coach like that who can really help you, so you're mentally as strong as possible. So even if the weekend's not going quite the way you want it to, you're able to bounce back from it and keep pushing forwards.
But I think that certainly, you know, in society as a whole, sexism is a much bigger problem than is given credit for. And it's a cultural thing. And in motor racing, you know, it's as alive and well there as it is anywhere else, isn't it, really?
Like the track days, I mean, a lot of the young guys in the hot hatches, they come up, they know that we're teaching women, and they come up behind us and they're going like this, and, you know, they're just desperate to get past. And it's quite funny, really, because it's been a male dominated sport for many years, and people have just got to get used to it now.
Yeah, totally.
Absolutely. And I think that's where this will really help, though, because you're not separate. I'm not got anything against W Series, but you're not separating it. You're keeping it together, proving that it's one of the few sports where men and women can compete as equals. And I think this will really prove, hopefully, and perhaps potentially start to adjust that culture, especially for young guys coming up through the ranks. If they're used to racing girls, it will become hopefully less of a big deal. Whereas when I was racing as a kid, I was normally the only girl on the grid. So of course it's different. Whereas if you're getting quite a few girls on the grid, hopefully there's just less focus on it overall. Yeah.
One of our finalists is from Kuwait. And I had a Zoom call with her recently, and she said, my concern is that the social media in my region is frowned upon, with women doing social media in sport until you've made a name for yourself in the sport that you're competing in.
Right.
Is that right? But that's quite a difficult thing to do, isn't it? Because you need to use that to help get the name, don't you? Yeah. It just shows, doesn't it, what people are up against, but that's what's so great about this, and hopefully it will keep evolving and progressing and help women a lot. So if people want to watch, is it going to be televised?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be broadcast. We don't conclude the production until the last race in October.
Okay.
Then it goes to the good thing about Greenlight Television. Greenlight have got Greenlight TV, which is UK based. They've also got Greenlight International, and we know for a fact that they've been focusing on some of the broadcasters that are representing the international competitors that we have.
Okay.
And without exception, there is interest, massive interest, because they want to follow these women. That even if they don't make it, this is great for the country.
Yeah, sure.
And I think we've got several options actually, because we've done two formats. We've done a factual documentary format, and we've done an entertainment reality format.
Okay.
They're two very different formats, but because of all the footage that we have and because of all the filming that's been done, we can go one way or the other, or we can go both ways.
Excellent. So you're not going to find out about that, did you say, till the end of the season?
You won't be broadcast until the end of the season, because they're just making the episodes, and obviously what we've done so far with the assessments and the finals will probably only make up episode 1 and 2.
Sure, of course. So if people want to come and actually watch live, then they can go on the GT Cup website or come to the Formula Women website and find out where the rounds are and come along and support the girls.
Absolutely, yeah. And they can also enter next year's competition, because the lines are now open.
Oh, okay, brilliant. Okay,
yeah.
Excellent. Well, we'll make sure we put that at the end as well, so people can do that. That's great. Okay, well, thank you so much, Graeme, for talking to us and explaining about Formula Women from its past to where it's going. It all sounds really exciting. We wish you the best of luck. Hopefully I'll keep being involved, and we'll see where it goes. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks,
Graeme.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.